to alleviate cramped joints and violent pain, by the Chinese as a treatment for rheumatism, as a laxative and an antiemetic. And in the 19th century, in the West, it was so highly regarded as a medicine that it was prescribed for royalty. It was still available on prescription until 1971, when the Misuse of Drugs Act banned even the medical use of the drug. Pharmacologist Roger Pertwee has been researching into the uses of cannabis for over 25 years.
Cannabis is a plant, of course, Cannabis sativa. It contains a unique set of compounds which we call cannabinoids, and there are more than 60 of these, and they're found throughout the plant and also in a very sticky resin which is secreted by the plant. And it's these compounds which account for the unique properties, pharmacological properties of cannabis, particularly one compound which is called THC, which is short for tetrahydrocannabinol.
Important discoveries have been made in recent years about the action of cannabis in the brain. Researchers have discovered areas, known as receptors, which cause changes in brain function when they are stimulated by compounds found in cannabis.
The fact that we have these special receptors in our brains, of course, raised the question immediately, what were they doing in the brain? Because clearly it didn't evolve simply so that we could experience the effects of cannabis.
Dr. Pertwee is one of an international group of researchers who discovered that the body produces its own natural version of cannabis compounds. Through interacting with the receptors, they probably work as chemical messengers to cause changes in the body. Not much is yet known about what these changes may be, but the little that is appears to support the patient's case.
The anecdotal evidence about multiple sclerosis fits very well with what we know about the science, of cannabinoids. These chemicals may be involved in ability to control our muscles because a lot of these receptors are found in those parts of the brain which do control motor function. At the end of the day, what we need are more experiments with people to actually sort out what it is in cannabis which is helping them.
One cannabis compound has been made synthetically, but the drug is only licensed to treat nausea caused by chemotherapy and not for pain relief. As so often happens, it's the patients who are arguing for change, for the therapeutic use of cannabis to be legalized. Claire Hodges is 37 and has suffered from multiple sclerosis for over 10 years. Her symptoms include sickness, stiffness, spinal pain, and discomfort in the bladder, which stops her sleeping.
I found the prescribed medicines I was given didn't work. So in desperation, at the suggestion of a friend with multiple sclerosis, I tried cannabis. And I found it relieved that sensation of a bursting bladder, which meant I could sleep. So that made an enormous difference, and my general health is just so much better. I feel I'm in control of what's going on now. Well, I and a couple of other patients started up a campaigning organisation to get cannabis available on medical prescription, not generally legalised or decriminalised. Since then, I've answered about 500 letters altogether. I myself am a sufferer from MS and get no relief from medical prescribed treatment. I am a non-smoker. In our opinion, cannabis is not only the treatment of choice, it is the only treatment during the whole course of illness which has produced any significant... Despite an inbuilt aversion to illegal substances, I now try cannabis, and now I can, with concentration, stretch my legs out straight after sitting on the floor or lying in a bed. I can watch TV for a couple of hours. We're not encouraging people to use cannabis. We're not encouraging people to break the law. We're just encouraging politicians to change the law.
The Alliance for Cannabis Therapeutics has to win broad support to achieve the reintroduction of cannabis as a medicine. Not all doctors are convinced of their case.
Now, I know it's possible to find lots of patients who might suffer from multiple sclerosis or other intractable conditions who might say, well, I've got a lot of relief from cannabis, how about it? And my response to that would be, well, in those chronic conditions, it's very difficult to know what drug or agent is actually producing benefit or harm. And so I think it's quite a good idea to do some research, to try and find any agent that might be useful, and then to evaluate it properly. Because with the best will in the world, patients' self-reports are often not borne out in larger studies.
The MS Society is a high-profile charity raising money for multiple sclerosis research. Though some MS sufferers claim cannabis helps ease their symptoms, the Society doesn't back the campaign for the therapeutic use of the drug.
All we've got at the moment is some people's accounts, so there's a bit of a step to take before we get there. And of course it's a complex organic substance with lots of different ingredients and molecules in it. And I suppose one might rather look at, say, the origins of aspirin, which was originally a derivative of willow bark. Well, now, if somebody's got a headache, you wouldn't send them out to chew a tree. You'd send them out to buy a bottle of aspirin, which hits the spot.
In a report published last year, over 70% of hospital doctors surveyed supported the availability of cannabis on prescription. Professor Wall is a renowned expert on pain and a supporter of the campaign.
You have to understand that doctors learn as much from patients as patients from doctors, and many sensible patients in pain from various causes are saying that cannabis helps them, and I think we should pay attention to that. The next step is for the government to give permission for doctors to use cannabis for therapeutic purposes and to carry out proper trials.
Last year, Professor Wall was part of a delegation with Claire Hodges, which went to Westminster to lobby for a change in the law.
The Department of Health gave us a very, very sympathetic hearing. The problem is political. I think they're afraid it might give the wrong messages politically. But we kept saying this is not a political issue, it's a health issue, it's a medical issue.
But it's a political fact that cannabis is illegal. Users can face heavy fines, even jail sentences. Part of the rationale is that cannabis is said to be addictive.
There's good evidence that cannabis can be psychologically addictive for some people, in that I meet patients who run into problems with the drug. They take more than they intend. It has a debilitating effect on their daily lives if they're smoking too much. They sometimes get a bit anxious on it. On the other hand, if you ask the question, does cannabis show signs of physical dependence, the answer is probably no. I say probably, but as far as we can tell, most cannabis users don't increase their consumption of the drug over time, and most cannabis users, even when smoking a lot, don't show much in the way of withdrawal symptoms.
I smoke it about 3 or 4 times a week, only one joint, one cigarette. So, I mean, I don't feel that I'm in any danger of either addiction or any potential side effects about which one knows so little.
Well, I've just gone 3 days without it. So if I can do that, then you can't be addicted.
This isn't the first time that medicinal claims have been made for banned drugs. It is now established medical practice to treat severe pain with the opiates heroin and morphine, which are undoubtedly addictive.
20 years ago, there was a very similar situation with respect to opiates, where there was a general feeling that these were immensely dangerous drugs which should not be used under any circumstances. In fact, it turns out that opiates are hugely useful. You will now see opiates being used more and more, and I think that cannabis also will appear that way in the future.
Dr. Pertwee is one of a small group of scientists in Britain who are allowed a government license to experiment with cannabis. He's conducting a survey of cannabis use amongst MS patients. He hopes the findings will encourage the Department of Health to support further research and clinical trials.
Clearly there are an awful lot of people who are taking cannabis. These are ordinary people. They're breaking the law, but in all other ways, as far as I can tell, they're not criminal. They obviously believe very strongly that cannabis is helping them. So I really think they deserve attention, and they deserve someone to come along and do proper trials and to find out once and for all whether cannabis should be available to them legally. See, the trouble is that, okay, it may be possible to develop new drugs in the future, but that's going to take 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And in the meantime, these people are going to continue to be taking cannabis, as I say, quite illegally. Because in my view, really, a very strong moral case could be made now for allowing doctors to prescribe cannabis for specific cases.
We asked the Department of Health for an interview. They gave us a statement explaining that it may be that specific medical conditions could be improved by the use of cannabis, but we would clearly need to look at this very carefully before any decision could be made allowing its use as a prescribed drug. As the debate continues, people like Tony will continue to break the law in their search for pain relief.
I managed to get some from a well-known seaside town, but then I thought that it was too expensive, so I grew my own. I got the seeds from a fishing shop. It was sold as fishing bait. And they told me, when I bought it, I asked them in a laughing kind of way, I said, well, can I grow this? And they said, oh no, madam, it's been treated. So anyway, I didn't believe them because I'm an optimist. And so I put some in little pots in the tool shed, and it grew. It grew, and it grew, and it grew, until it was about this high, about 5 feet high. I get someone to help me roll it, because my no dexterity isn't absolutely fantastic, and then I keep it in that little silver box on the mantelpiece, which belonged to my great-grandmother. I don't think she'd disapprove, and neither would Queen Victoria, because Queen Victoria took it for her menstrual cramps. So history records.